Hey guys. Well, if you're brave enough to press play, let's begin. Tonight we slip back in time, not into a gilded throne room or chivalrous battle, but straight into the mud-crusted, lice-ridden folds of medieval daily life. You open your eyes to the sound of a rooster, but there's no snooze button here. You're waking up in a drafty timber hut that smells like smoke, mouldy bread, and something far worse you can't quite identify. Your head's pounding because the pillow is just a burlap sack filled with hay, and, to your dismay, something crawling. Sunlight slashes through the cracks in the wall, and the air bites your face like it's holding a grudge. To be honest, you probably won't survive this. You sit up, brushing away a spider the size of your thumb, and swing your feet onto a dirt floor that's somehow colder than outside. You reach for your shoes, but remember, oh right, you don't have any. Just stiff leather foot sacks tied with string. You sigh. So before the lights go out, click like and subscribe, but only if you're brave enough to return tomorrow night. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. We'll see who has it worse. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan, because silence makes this story worse, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stretch, groaning as your spine cracked like firewood. Your back hurts because your straw mattress is shared by the rest of your family, and probably their fleas too. Privacy doesn't exist here. Everyone sleeps in one room, unless you're rich, and even then, the walls don't block sound. Or smells. Your first real act of the day is crouching over a wooden bucket that serves as the toilet. There's no flush, just you, your regrets, and a pungent cloud of despair. Your chores begin immediately. There's no leisurely cup of coffee or scroll through social media. You're sent outside to feed the chickens, but the mud tries to eat your foot. You barely get them scattered feed before your mother is shouting about the butter churning. You're already late and it's not even 6 a.m. You complain, and she tells you to shut up before the neighbours accuse you of idleness. A sin, and weirdly sometimes a crime. You're hungry. But breakfast isn't eggs and toast. It's dark rye bread so dense you could use it to build a wall. There's also something called pottage, a gruel-like stew that's been reheated for 4 days straight. You dip your spoon in and discover a surprise lump that might be meat, but also might not. It tastes like salt and ancient sadness. On your way to the well, you step aside as a man carrying a dead pig carcass nearly smacks you with its tail. You nod politely, because he's armed with a knife and 3 teeth, and you don't want trouble. Oh, and congratulations, you've already broken 3 laws. 1. You didn't attend morning prayer, which, depending on where and when you are, could earn you a fine or a whipping. 2. You wore dyed fabric, and sumptuary laws forbid that if you're not rich enough. 3. You made eye contact with a local noble's steward. That's not a law, but it might get you punched. Historians still argue whether the average medieval villager was truly as oppressed as we assume, or whether the strict laws were more like guidelines. But your stubbed toe and bruised pride say it doesn't really matter. Life is hard, and every interaction feels like stepping into a trap you didn't see coming. There's no rest. You're assigned to help mend the roof using wattle and daub, basically branches and mud. It smells like wet compost and never fully dries. Your hands bleed from the rough work, but no one hands you a bandage. Instead, you're told to rub it with garlic, which, oddly, they kind of believed healed everything from infections to vampires. The village smells intense. Think burning wood, open sewage, livestock musk, and body odour stewing under wool tunics that haven't been washed since Lent last year. Your nose stops noticing after a while, or it gives up trying. You try to sneak a break and lean on a fence post. A rooster glares at you like you owe it money. 2 kids race by, one holding a frog, the other holding a stick and chasing it. An old woman mutters in Latin while stirring something in a cauldron. Is she a healer? A witch? Both. Historians still argue whether the cunning folk of the Middle Ages were respected or feared, but you decide not to make eye contact. And no, you can't just leave. You're tied to your lord's land through the manorial system, like a medieval Netflix subscription you never ask for and can't cancel. You're legally required to work the land, pay dues, and offer your services during emergencies, which includes plagues, fires, and the occasional wolf infestation. You're not alone in your confusion, though. The guy next to you doesn't know what day it is either. The church controls time here, literally. Bells signal everything from waking to praying to sleeping. If you miss one, good luck. Time is God's property, and you are leasing it. And let's not even start on your name. You're probably just John of Mudbrook, or Agnes the Smith's wife. Last names are for rich people or criminals. You overhear someone talking about a festival coming up. You perk up, maybe some fun. Then you hear it's a holy feast involving a 7-hour sermon, a dry oat cake, and public self-flagellation. Party. You end your day sore, confused, and already terrified of tomorrow. The stars come out. They're beautiful, but also your only streetlights. Wolves howl in the distance, and somewhere close, a cow is giving birth very loudly and very badly. Your feet are blistered, your clothes are filthy, and your soul is questioning everything. Welcome to medieval life. One sunrise down. Just a few decades to go. Your mouth feels like it's been stuffed with burlap. You wake up coughing, not from a cold, though that's coming, but from the smoky air trapped inside your one-room home. Last night's fire is still smouldering under a pile of ashes, and the smoke has nowhere to go but your lungs. There's a hole in the roof, technically a chimney, but calling it that is a medieval oversell. Your throat's raw, and so are your gums. You sit up, and it hits your teeth, or rather, the complete betrayal of them. A dull, nagging throb has taken up residence in your molars. The pain is personal. Your breath could knock out a goat. You run your tongue along your teeth and feel a jagged edge. Half of one's broken clean off. You're not sure how. Maybe it was that unsoaked barley loaf yesterday. Or maybe your tooth simply gave up, like your will to churn butter ever again. The thing is, there's no brushing here. Toothpaste? Nope. Toothbrush? Try a frayed stick, if you're fancy. Most people just rinse with water, if that, and hope for the best. Dental hygiene isn't a thing yet. Historians still argue whether people in the Middle Ages did occasionally use herbal pastes or chew certain roots. But whatever the truth, the evidence is clear. Your mouth is a disaster zone. Now, about that medieval dentist. Technically, he's the local barber. He cuts hair, sets bones, and pulls teeth. Not necessarily in that order. You shuffle over to his shop, which is a stool under a tree, and sit down. He takes one look at you and grins, revealing the 2 teeth he has left. Comforting. He doesn't ask questions. Instead, he pours something into a wooden cup, wine, possibly vinegar, and hands it to you. For the pain, he says. You take a gulp. It burns. It's stronger than you expected, and tastes like despair. Then comes the tool. A pair of iron tongs that look like someone's cruel joke. He doesn't wear gloves. There's no antiseptic. He tells you to bite down on a stick, and you do, because you're afraid of biting down on your own tongue by accident. Then he leans in, one strong yank, and he scream. He yells too, probably from sympathy, or maybe because your tooth didn't come quietly. There's a cracking sound. Maybe it's the root. Maybe it's your jaw. You're too busy sobbing to ask. Afterward, he hands you a rag and tells you not to talk for the rest of the day. Let it clot, he mutters, stuffing the tooth in his pocket. You don't ask why. You walk home dizzy, bleeding, and slightly more traumatized than you were this morning. But hey, no more toothaches, just a brand new hole in your face. By the way, you're not getting dentures. Those are centuries away. You'll just whistle when you speak now. Everyone around you is in the same boat, though. Tooth lost by 20 is not... You pass by a woman chewing bark and ask what it's for. She tells you it's willow looch dulls pain. Technically, she's onto something. Willow bark contains salicin, which is like medieval aspirin. A fun fact to keep you distracted from your mouth leaking blood. Later that day, you're handed a chore involving apples. You try to take a bite, forgetting what just happened. Bad idea. Pain shoots through your jaw like a lightning bolt made of shame. Your eyes water. Someone laughs. You make a mental note. No hard food. Just broth, porridge, and whatever despair tastes like. You meet an older man. Well, he's 35 but looks 70, and you notice he's completely toothless. His lips have collapsed inward like a deflated wineskin. He speaks with a wet slur, and when you ask him what he eats, he says, soup. Always soup. He also mentions that people sometimes boiled onions and garlic. Meanwhile, rumours swirl of odd treatments for dental issues. Some folks say rubbing crushed garlic on your gums helps. Others say chanting psalms while holding a frog in your mouth works better. Historians still debate whether these methods were folk remedies or just desperate stabs in the dark, but you're in no shape to judge. You're considering the garlic. And maybe the frog. You return home and try rinsing your mouth with salt water. It stings like betrayal. A child nearby offers to sell you a holy relic, said to prevent tooth rot. It's a walnut shell tied with twine. You buy it anyway. Desperation does weird things to a person. As evening falls, you catch a glimpse of yourself in a bucket of water. Your face looks pale, and there's dried blood at the corner of your mouth. Your teeth, what's left of them, are yellow, crooked, and spaced like a broken picket fence. You look older than you did yesterday. People don't just suffer in silence. They expect it. Pain is considered a natural part of life. If you're lucky, the village priest might offer a prayer. If you're really lucky, you won't die of a gum infection that spreads to your brain. And yes, that happens. Often. You lie down that night on the same scratchy straw mattress, the taste of iron still in your mouth. Your head throbs from lack of sleep, poor nutrition, and trauma. You close your eyes, thinking of modern things. Electric toothbrushes, floss, bubblegum toothpaste, and you laugh quietly. Then wince. Even that hurt. And in the distance, you hear the clanging of the church bell calling for vespers. Time to pray again, with what's left of your mouth. The next morning greets you with a stiff neck, a sore jaw, and a gnawing emptiness in your belly. You're starving, and not in the missed lunch way. This is medieval hunger, an everyday visitor, more dependable than sunshine or clean socks. You shuffle toward the hearth where something is already bubbling. The good news? There's food. The bad news? It's pottage again. Pottage is the Middle Ages' answer to what's in the fridge, except there is no fridge, and what's in the pot is anyone's guess. Today it smells vaguely of onions and regret. You dip a wooden spoon into the thick sludge and try to remember when it was last emptied. It's been reheated at least 3 times, and you're pretty sure you saw the same beet chunk floating in there yesterday. You eat it anyway. Next to the pot sits a loaf of dark, dense bread rye, maybe barley. It's hard enough to chip a tooth, but that's no longer your concern, thanks to yesterday's dental adventure. You chew slowly, though chewing may be a generous word. It's more like grinding, with commitment. You wash it down with something in a wooden mug. Is it beer? Yes, breakfast beer. In fact, it's safer than water. You've already learned that the village well is an ongoing bacterial experiment. Water passes through everything, human waste, rotting thatch, and into your cup with a cheerful glug. Beer, at least, is boiled during brewing. So yes, everyone drinks ale, including children. It's weak, but still. Cheers to 7 a.m. buzzers and pre-teen barflies. Historians still argue whether all medieval people were constantly drunk or just a little tipsy all the time, but you're definitely feeling it after 2 mugs. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve and burp softly. Your stomach doesn't thank you, but it tolerates the meal. So far. You step outside, hoping the fresh air might help. Instead, you're hit with a wall of scent, manure, fish guts, and the sharp tang of unwashed humanity. Your neighbour is gutting eels on a table outside his door. You nod at him. He grunts back, then flicks a fish scale onto your foot. You try not to think about food again, but your stomach disagrees. You want something sweet, something fresh. Unfortunately, sugar's rare and expensive, basically currency-level luxury. Your dessert options range from dried fruit, if you can find it, to honey if you're extremely lucky. Most likely you'll nibble on a cold boiled turnip and pretend it's a donut. Spoiler, it isn't. Lunch is, well, it's like breakfast, but worse, because the beer's warmer, the pottage is thicker, and you've now accepted that food is fuel, not joy. Occasionally you'll hear rumours about feasts, but unless you're nobility, or it's a religious holiday, you're not getting roasted meat or pies. Those belong to a different world, one with actual cutlery. There's also the constant fear of bad grain. Ever heard of ergot? It's a fungus that grows on rye and can make you hallucinate wildly or die slowly. Some think it contributed to mass hysteria events in medieval Europe. Historians still debate its actual impact, but one thing's certain: if your bread starts to tingle your tongue and make you see ghosts, stop eating. Too late? Well, enjoy the ride. By now your stomach's churning. You pray it's just nerves, but your insides are having a full-blown medieval meltdown. No Imodium, no safe bathroom, just the family bucket in the corner, or, if you're feeling adventurous, the latrine pit behind the barn. The medieval term for this situation? Dysentery. It's the unofficial national illness of the age. Common, brutal, and often fatal. It doesn't care about class or status. It spread everyone from peasants to kings. It spread through bad food, filthy water, and general human contact. You try to remember who handed you that mug earlier. You wonder if they washed their hands. Trick question. They didn't. You double over in pain. Your stomach is staging a rebellion. You run outside, find a semi-public bush and brace yourself. Nature cools, and it yells. The experience is unspeakable. Let's just say you leave behind your dignity, several fluids, and possibly part of your soul. You return to the house pale and trembling. You want rest, but you're handed a bucket. It's time to collect eggs. The chickens glare at you, as if they've heard about your condition. One pecks your shin, another poops on your shoe. You blink slowly and whisper, "I hate it here." Quirky fact. Some medieval folks believed hens could spontaneously generate percurating without roosters. Seriously. They thought eggs just sort of happened. Magic birds. You watch a chicken strut around proudly and decide not to argue. You gather a few eggs and bring them inside, placing them next to a wheel of cheese that's turning colours you didn't know cheese could turn. No one minds. If it smells strong, it's probably ready. Or deadly. It's a gamble either way. Dinner arrives, and with it more pottage. You ask what's in it this time, and someone says, "Whatever we found." You find a bone. You find a feather. You find something that crunches and immediately stop investigating. There's a piece of fresh bread to go with it, but it's mouldy, not just a spot like Fuzzy. Your uncle tells you to scrape it off and eat the rest. Penicillin, he jokes. You laugh. Then you remember. Penicillin won't be discovered for centuries, so you scrape and chew in silence. As the sun sets, the smells of the day bake into your skin. You try to brush your teeth with a cloth and some ashes, then remember that brushing hurts too much now. So instead, you rinse your mouth with ale. Again. Your gums sting. You sigh. Your stomach gurgles, threatening more drama. But you manage to lie down without an emergency sprint. For now. You pull a blanket over your aching frame, curl up near the dying fire, and pray that tomorrow's food won't be so medieval. But deep down, you know better. Tomorrow's pottage is already waiting. You wake up before dawn, again, because here the sun doesn't ask if you're ready, it simply rises, dragging you with it. You blink into the hazy grey light and roll off the straw mattress with a groan. Your joints creak like rusty hinges, and your muscles ache from yesterday's roofing, egg collecting, and dramatic gastrointestinal episode. And now, it's time to start all over again. Today, you're headed to the fields. Not because you're inspired by nature or enjoy a brisk walk. No, you're obligated. Remember that charming little detail called the manorial system. You don't own the land you work on. It belongs to your lord, and your job, every day except maybe Sunday, is to farm it. Whether you're growing barley, wheat, peas, or turnips, it's your duty. And skipping out? That could land you a fine, a beating, or both joy. You step into your stiff wool tunic, tie a belt around your waist, and stuff your sore feet into leather shoes that feel like damp cardboard. You grab your hoe and head out. The field is a half-mile away, and the mud greets you like an old enemy. Each step is a negotiation between your shoe and the earth. You slip once, twice, then surrender and walk barefoot. Your feet squelch, your soul weeps. You're not alone in your suffering. Around you, dozens of villagers are already bent over, working rows of land as mist clings low to the ground. No tractors, no gloves, just hands, backs, and primitive tools. The soil is heavy, and the work is endless. You dig, pull, plant, repeat. Your fingers blister within an hour. Dirt gets under your nails, into your teeth, and probably into your bloodstream. The air smells like damp hay, animal sweat, and wet iron. You hear grunting, coughing, and the distant clatter of a wooden cart. Occasionally, someone groans and stands up to stretch, their back bent like a question mark. You try to do the same and almost topple over. You've discovered a new kind of pain, medieval spine syndrome. Historians still argue whether peasant work was a constant backpacking torment, or simply the expected rhythm of daily survival. But right now, your spine votes torment. Especially because the fields are filled with rocks, roots, and other fun little trip hazards. At one point, you stub your toe so hard you see stars. You look down, blood. No one reacts. You get a short break mid-morning. That means sitting on a rock and eating a chunk of stale bread and a lukewarm turnip. You chew slowly, trying not to reopen your aching gums. A local child watches you eat. You give them a bite, because refusing might be considered rude, or worse, selfish. The sun climbs higher. You sweat through your tunic, which is already itchy enough to make you consider nudity. But that would be frowned upon, and possibly criminal. By noon, you're swatting away flies, picking dirt from your ears, and wondering if death might just be a long nap. You drink from a leather pouch that once held ale, but now just has lukewarm, murky water. You try not to think about the water source. You fail. You spot your lord in the distance, riding past on a horse. His boots are clean. He doesn't make eye contact. His dog gets more food in a week than you do in a month. He's heading to the manor, where lunch probably includes roast meat, fresh fruit, and actual forks. You return to work. This time it's sowing seeds. You bend, toss, cover, over and over. You're competing with birds who see your effort as a buffet. One seagull lands near your row and stares at you, smugly. You yell at it. It doesn't care. There's also a cow wandering too close. No one stops it. It knocks over a basket of tools. The dog chases it. A goat joins the chaos. You close your eyes and whisper a prayer to any deity listening. Around mid-afternoon, the weather shifts. Rain. Cold, sideways rain. No raincoat, no umbrella, just your wool tunic and the gift of shivering. You trudge on, soaked and miserable, while your shoes, if you're still wearing them, gurgle with each step. Someone nearby sneezes violently and keeps working. You will that not to be contagious. Back at the house, you peel off your wet clothes and hang them by the fire. They'll still be damp tomorrow. Everything is always damp, even your thoughts. Oh, and if you're a woman, surprise. You did all that field work and had to cook, fetch water, spin wool, and care for children, who are themselves possibly plotting to eat dirt or climb onto rooftops. There's no break. If you're bleeding, you work. Pregnant? Work. In labour? Work. Then raise a child while working. Pregnancy hasn't arrived yet, and you feel every second of it. Dinner is more pottage, with an added treat, a single boiled egg. You weep softly. A luxury. You eat it in 4 reverent bites. Quirky fact of the day? Some medieval folks believed that peasants were actually stronger than nobles because they worked more. You'd like to tell those folks that strong doesn't mean happy, or comfortable, or pain-free. It just means broken in new ways. You slump down beside the fire, trying not to move. Every joint has declared independence. Your arms are sunburned. Your calves are tight. You smell like soil, sweat, and suffering. You exhale, trying to ease the stiffness in your spine, but it feels permanent. You fall asleep the way people pass out, deep, dark, and sudden. Your body may rest, but your dreams are filled with turnips, birds stealing seeds, and a rooster that... And tomorrow? Same field, same mud, same pain, morning again. Or something pretending to be morning, since it feels like you closed your eyes 5 minutes ago. You peel yourself off the straw mattress, now a patchwork of crushed bugs, dried sweat, and one mysterious sticky spot you vow never to investigate. Your muscles protest every move, your feet are still damp, and your tunic... Today you're told you won't be in the field. Relief? Briefly. Then you find out you're helping with clothing duties, which, in medieval terms, is less fashion and more survival against wind, rain, and fleas. You start with your tunic. Scratchy wool, hand-woven, dyed with whatever plant material you had, or, if you were lucky, actual dyes. Though the good ones are outlawed for common folk. Sumptuary laws make it clear. Colour is a class privilege. Deep blue, royal, crimson, clergy, bright green, not for you, peasant. You wear the shade of dirt and disappointment. The tunic itself is basically a long rectangle with holes. The sleeves are tight, the seams uneven, and everything smells faintly of sheep sweat. And since you only have 1 or 2 sets of clothes at most, you're wearing it again. Yes, even though it hasn't been washed in... you can't remember. Speaking of washing clothes, congratulations, you've just earned the privilege of medieval laundry. You head to the stream with a basket of clothes so stiff they could stand on their own. There's no detergent, no washboard, no spin cycle, just cold water, some homemade lye soap, and your poor chapped hands. You kneel at the water's edge and start scrubbing with a rock. You think it's going well until you realise the soap stings every open cut and callus. Historians still argue whether medieval folks truly stank all the time, or just had different standards. Either way, your clothes smell like a wet barn, and you do too. After hours of scrubbing, wringing, and smacking, you haul the damp garments home. There's no clothesline, so you drape them over chairs and beams and hope they dry before they rot. They won't. Now let's talk about shoes, or, more accurately, leather footbags. Your shoes are made from tanned animal hide, stitched roughly, and softened, if you're lucky, with animal fat or oil. They don't fit perfectly, they don't support anything, and they're about as waterproof as a sponge. Walking through mud feels like dragging wet socks. Dream on. Maybe some strips of linen wrapped around your feet, but that's it. And don't expect a new pair of shoes next month, or year. If yours fall apart, you beg the cobbler for a fix, or you go barefoot and pretend it's a choice. And what about winter? That same tunic, just with another one layered over it. Maybe a cloak if you're wealthy, or a particularly good scrounger. Wool keeps you warm even when wet, they say. You find that only partly true. Mostly you're just constantly damp and itchy. Underwear? Yes, sort of. Men might wear linen braids, like loose shorts, and women wore a shift, a long undershirt. But keeping them clean is another thing entirely. One poor soul nearby has been wearing the same linen for so long it's become stiff. You avert your eyes. You spot a noblewoman passing by on horseback. She's wearing a rich cloak lined with fur and dyed a red so vivid it could make your eyes water. She looks like she stepped out of a storybook. She doesn't see you, or chooses not to. Her shoes are velvet. Yours are bleeding. You try not to resent her. It's difficult. A quirky tidbit. Some nobles padded their clothes with moss for warmth or shape. Peasants, you just layer and hope. There's also a strange superstition you overhear someone believes wearing red protects you from illness. You look down at your brown tunic and sigh. Guess you're on your own. As the day goes on, you're given a new task, spinning wool. You sit with a bundle of raw fleece, greasy, smelly, filled with twigs and possibly a live beetle, and you start teasing it out. You use a drop spindle, slowly twisting the fibres into thread. It's tedious, it's delicate. It's oddly satisfying until your fingers cramp and you accidentally snap the thread for the 15th time. You envy the spinner next to you. Her hands move like magic. She sings softly while she works, a lullaby about St. Bridget blessing the sheep. You hum along and almost forget your back hurts, until someone asks you to help card the wool combing out the tangles using a tool that looks suspiciously like a medieval torture device. Your arms are sore within minutes. You think longingly of washing clothes again. That was almost fun compared to this. By late afternoon, the sun's dropping and your clothes, now mostly dry, still carry the faint aroma of goat. You fold them and store them in a chest. You sit by the fire, trying to retie your shoelaces, which are just strips of leather. One snaps. You stare at it like it insulted your mother. And then comes the lice check. Not official, of course. Just your sister picking at your scalp and frowning. Everyone has lice. It's like a shared village pet. You scratch idly, try to forget and retighten your belt. Your clothes cling to you with the weight of 1,000 tiny itches. You lie down wearing the same tunic you wore all day. It's itchy, it's damp. It smells faintly of sheep fat, soap, and suffering. You try to stretch, but your feet cramp. You pull the blanket higher and stare at the ceiling. Maybe tomorrow will be fieldwork again. Or pigs. Or leeches. Whatever it is, it'll involve dirt, discomfort, and wool that hates your skin. It's cold when you wake up. So cold your breath floats like a ghost above your face, and you hesitate to move, knowing your blanket, which is really just a slightly less dirty sheet of wool, won't come with you. Your body is stiff, your toes are numb, and your mouth tastes like someone stuffed it with copper coins. You sit up slowly, bracing for whatever fresh medieval surprise awaits you today. And surprise. It's illness. Not full-blown plague yet, but your throat is scratchy, your head is heavy, and your nose is both running and somehow blocked. You sniff, hoping it'll pass. It doesn't. Someone nearby coughs with the energy of a dying accordion. You shift away discreetly, though you're probably already doomed. In the Middle Ages, illness isn't just common, it's inevitable. Everyone gets sick. Often, children rarely survive to adulthood, and adults rarely make it past 40 without collecting a few long-term health problems, like arthritis, chronic infections, or mysterious swellings. You blink slowly and try not to panic when you realize your armpit feels sore. Still, there's work to do, so you drag yourself outside and immediately regret it. The cold air feels like broken glass in your lungs. You're sent to gather herbs for healing. That means trudging into the woods and praying not to accidentally grab something poisonous. You pick leaves that look vaguely minty and a root that smells like feet. Back in the village, the local healer inspects your finds. She crushes a few into a paste and hands you a goblet of greenish water. You drink it, because she's holding a stick and staring. It tastes like sadness and tree bark. She tells you to rest. You want to laugh, but instead you cough. If you were a noble, you might be visited by a physician. He'd show up in long robes, a beard, and a bag full of theoretical knowledge. He might bleed you with a knife or leeches, or suggest purging, which is exactly as pleasant as it sounds. If you're lucky, he'd just recommend a poultice and a prayer. Historians still argue whether these medieval doctors helped more than they harmed, but for common folk like you, that debate's irrelevant. You don't have access to one. You have Maud, the herb lady, and she's doing her best with dried chamomile and a suspiciously old egg. At one point someone suggests you've been cursed. Maybe you offended a saint. Maybe your soul's out of balance. Another neighbour tells you to sleep with a clove of garlic under your pillow. You do. The smell is intense, but somehow comforting. Or maybe you're hallucinating. It's hard to tell anymore. You try to lie down and rest, but the fire's too far away, and the smoke keeps drifting directly into your face. You're sweating and freezing at the same time. A child pokes you with a stick and says, "You look like the devil." You tell him thanks. He runs off to chase a pig. And then someone mentions the plague. Not because you have it, but because every time someone coughs, it's on the table. The Black Death won't hit your village for a few more decades. Or maybe it already has, and you're in a lull. Time is confusing, and so are disease waves. You clutch your garlic clove tighter. That evening, a man in town gets sick. Really sick. He's shaking, feverish, and mumbling about demons. His wife ties a sprig of rosemary to his door. It's meant to keep illness out, or trap it inside. Either way, no one's visiting. He might recover. He might die. He might be buried before sunrise. There's no hospital. There's barely a graveyard. Quirky side note. Some medieval folks believed that illness was caused by bad smells. Miasma, floating around like invisible fog. That's why people burned herbs indoors, stuffed flowers into masks, or wore pomanders around their necks. You look at your tunic pocket and consider turning it into a garlic pouch. Your cough gets worse that night. Someone brings you a drink made from boiled nettles and honey. It tastes slightly less terrible than tree bark, so you count it as a win. You sleep near the fire, head propped on a bundle of rags. Every few minutes you wake up shivering or sweating. And that's the thing. Illness here doesn't come with rest and care. It comes with anxiety, judgment, and superstition. You overhear someone suggesting you might be harbouring sin. Another claims you've been overworked, as if that's a surprise. A third whispers that your soul's imbalance can be corrected by pilgrimage. To where? No one knows. Probably somewhere with fewer rats. Your dreams are strange. You're being chased by leeches with legs. You wake up coughing into your blanket and praying you didn't catch something worse. When morning comes, you're not better, but you're not dead. You drag yourself outside, squinting into the daylight, and watch two chickens fight over a beetle. Life goes on. So do you. You rub the sleep from your eyes and glance at your reflection in a puddle. Your face is pale, your lips cracked, and your nose is leaking. You sniff and mutter, charming. Then you shuffle toward the herb lady's cottage again, because even though garlic under your pillow didn't fix you, at least it kept the rats away. You begin to understand why medieval people turned so quickly to religion in times of sickness. Sometimes, all you can do is hope the saints are listening, or at least that Maud remembers how much rosemary is too much. The sun's barely up and the air already smells complicated. A little like wet stone, a lot like manure. And wait, is that? Yes, that is most definitely human waste. Welcome to your local castle. And no, you're not here for a royal banquet or a visit to the throne room. Well, actually yes. You're here for the throne, but not the fancy kind. You've been sent to deliver a message to the castle steward. Sounds glamorous. It's not. You walk across the drawbridge and immediately regret breathing. That moat you just crossed, it's not filled with water lilies and swans. It's a giant glorified sewage ditch. Everything from the castle food scraps, chamber pots, rotten hay, gets dumped straight into it. And you're expected to smile politely as the smell climbs into your hair and takes up permanent residence. The castle walls are imposing from the outside. Tall, thick, built to withstand siege. But from the inside, they're cold, damp, and smell like damp wool and candle grease. Your feet echo against the stone, and your breath fogs in front of you. Colder in here than it was outside. And this is summer. In winter, just assume your bones will freeze and move on. You pass through a hall lit by torches that flicker and spit. The soot from centuries has turned the ceiling black. Every breath feels like inhaling a fireplace. You cough discreetly. No one notices. Eventually, you're directed toward the steward, who accepts the message without thanks and waves you off. But now that you're inside, you have to use the restroom. And here's where things really get medieval. Castles didn't have bathrooms. Not the way you're imagining. They had garderobes. Sounds fancy, right? It's not. A garderobe is a small stone room jutting out over the edge of the wall with a hole in the floor. That's it. Just a hole. Your business drops straight down the shaft, and ideally into the moat, or splatters somewhere close. There's no seat. Just the cold, uninviting stone rim. No toilet paper either. Maybe a rag. Possibly moss. If you're lucky, someone left a handful of straw. If you're unlucky, Someone used it already. You inch into the garderobe, breathing through your mouth. It's dark, cold, echoey, and unsettlingly breezy in all the wrong places. There's graffiti scratched into the wall, something about St. Anthony and an unfortunate incident involving goose fat. You finish your business quickly, trying not to look down. Or up. Or anywhere, really. You exit, and suddenly everything feels itchy. A fun, quirky fact: some medieval folks believed that garderobes also acted as a kind of clothing storage. The ammonia fumes from the waste were thought to kill lice, so garments were hung nearby. Yes, really. You wonder if the smell was worth the bug death. You decide no. You explore the rest of the castle, mostly because you can't find the exit, and also because your legs are frozen. You wander into the Great Hall, which is grand, yes, but not as clean as you expected. The rushes on the floor are strewn with bones, bread crusts and... Wait, is that a rat? No one else seems bothered. In one corner, a servant is using a long broom made of twigs to push trash into the fireplace. You ask if that's normal. He shrugs. Better than eating it, he says. You nod, unsure whether he's joking. You peer into the kitchens. They're full of smoke and noise. Meat roasting over open flames, dogs lurking for scraps, and one extremely harried cook waving a ladle like a sword. The smell here is actually decent, but it's layered with so many conflicting scents your brain short-circuits. Is that cinnamon? And fish? Together? Oh dear. You learn that most castles relied heavily on salt to preserve food, since there's no refrigeration. That means everything tastes vaguely of salt, mould, or both. Bread is baked in great round loaves, sometimes with pebbles in the dough to clean the flour. That's why so many teeth are missing. You sigh, remembering your own dental situation. Your tour ends in a sleeping chamber, or what passes for one. A large bed dominates the room, filled with layers of wool, straw, and furs. Sounds luxurious, until you realize the sheets haven't been washed since the last monarch. Fleas jump off the blanket like they pay rent. Historians still argue whether medieval nobles were truly ignorant of hygiene or just playing the hand they were dealt. Either way, bathing wasn't regular, and beds were often infested. Some folks believed baths weakened the body and let diseases in through the pores. So cleanliness? Optional. You spot a chamber pot under the bed and immediately wish you hadn't. It's full. Very full. A servant enters, grabs it without gloves, and disappears with the confidence of a man who's seen things. And then, joy of joys, you're told you're staying the night in the castle. You think maybe that's a win, until you realize your bed is a wooden bench in the hall, near a window that doesn't close and a draft that could chill soup. The fire burns low. Somewhere, someone starts snoring. Someone else coughs wetly. A baby cries in the distance. Your stomach growls, but you're too tired to care. You wrap your cloak tighter and settle in, trying to ignore the scratching sound near your foot. Rat? Probably. You don't look. As you drift off, you think about your own home, cramped, cold and smelly, somehow less terrifying than a night inside this drafty fortress. At least there, you know which bucket is the toilet. The rooster is late this morning, or maybe you're early. Hard to tell when you've spent the entire night tossing on a wooden bench while mystery bugs explored your socks. Your neck is permanently tilted, and your legs are frozen stiff from the draft that crawled through the cracks in the stone wall. But today is important. Today, you're going to learn about medieval hygiene. Spoiler, it's going to hurt. First, you stretch and attempt something like a yawn, though your jaw protests with the energy of a rusty hinge. You head outside, blinking into the grey light. The castle courtyard is already buzzing, servants hauling buckets, dogs sniffing corners, and someone arguing about whose turn it is to dump the latrines. You pass the kitchen, where a cook is pouring leftover grease into a wooden tub. He's not throwing it away. That's tomorrow's soap. It's called lye soap, made from ashes and fat, and it's strong enough to clean clothes, pots, and possibly your soul. Unfortunately, it also smells like wet firewood and feet. But soap is rare in most homes. Too expensive, too precious. Many villagers rely on just water, cold, muddy water, that's fetched from a stream, also used by cows and the occasional desperate traveller. You wonder how anyone got clean, and then you remember, they mostly didn't. Bathing is infrequent at best, once a week if you're lucky, once a year if you're not. In some towns there are public bathhouses, often communal and shockingly casual. Men, women, kids, all splashing around together. Some places even serve snacks. But lately bathhouses are gaining a reputation for more than just hygiene. Let's just say the church frowns on them now. Too much temptation, they mutter. You raise an eyebrow and decide not to investigate. Still, some folks do try. There's a wooden tub at your home, stashed in the corner like a forgotten boat. Bath day involves boiling water over a fire, hauling it in bucket by bucket and pouring it carefully to avoid scalding your feet. You fill it halfway, then your dad bathes, then your mum, then your older brother. By the time it's your turn, the water is grey and slightly lumpy. You bathe anyway. You scrub with a rag, no loofahs here, and maybe use herbs like rosemary or mint, if you're feeling fancy. You emerge with cleaner skin, but the haunting knowledge of every skin flake that floated in before you. Hair is its own adventure. Shampoo doesn't exist, but some people use vinegar, ashes, or clay to try to degrease their locks. Your hair feels like hay, smells like cheese, and reacts to brushing like it's being punished. Then there's the lice. Everyone has them, even the nobles. That's why people shave their heads sometimes, especially under wigs or hats. Women braid their hair tightly to make it harder for bugs to move in. You try not... One quirky but horrifying trick? Some folks wore linen head coverings soaked in vinegar overnight to kill lice. Others combed their hair with bone combs and then threw the bugs into the fire, one by one. You sit by the hearth and consider trying it. Then you see a flea leap from your sleeve and disappear into the shadows. Your clothes, if you recall, haven't been washed properly in weeks, maybe months. You aired them out yesterday, and that counts. The smell? An earthy blend of smoke, body, sheep, and humility. You catch a whiff and wonder how you haven't been banned from the village. Your hands are another matter. They're cracked from cold, stained from work, and smell faintly of onions. There's no soap to wash with regularly, so you settle for wiping them on your tunic and rinsing at the stream when it's not frozen. Germ theory hasn't arrived yet, so nobody knows to wash before eating, or after. Historians still argue whether medieval folk had some basic understanding of cleanliness, or whether they genuinely believed dirt was protective. One theory says washing too often opened your body to illness. Another says clean skin angered God. Either way, you're filthy and praying you don't catch something. Teeth? We've covered that horror. But what about breath? Garlic-heavy diets, no toothpaste, and constant beer don't help. You try chewing a mint leaf. It lasts 2 seconds. You consider silence as a kindness to others. You wander the village, catching snippets of gossip about someone who washes too much. Suspicious, they say. What's he hiding? Only witches are that clean. You smile nervously and wipe your forehead with a dusty sleeve. Later, you witness a woman giving her baby a sponge bath with a cloth dipped in herbal water. It's tender, methodical, and oddly moving. But the cloth? Not exactly sterile. You're told that sometimes babies are swaddled for days without being unwrapped. It keeps them safe, they say, or possibly just preserves the grime in a cosy little bundle. The day ends with you sitting beside a fire, attempting to clean your nails with a stick. You glance at your feet and sigh. You can't remember the last time they saw water, but they've definitely seen mud, blood, and possibly a frog. A neighbour offers you a pouch of dried lavender to hang from your belt. It's supposed to mask odour and maybe keep illness away. You tie it on. It smells nice. You cling to it like hope. That night, as you curl into your scratchy tunic, lying in a blanket that smells like wet dog and firewood, you wonder how anyone ever found love in this era. Everyone stinks. Everyone's itchy, and bath night involves at least one toe burn. Still, somehow, they made it work. You sigh and scratch at your scalp one last time before drifting off into a restless, herbal-scented sleep. You're awoken not by the rooster this time, but by bells, long, slow, echoing across the village like a holy reminder that God knows what you did yesterday, and today, and possibly what you were thinking just now. It's Sunday, or at least a day that vaguely resembles it, which means everything changes and yet somehow stays the same. You drag yourself out of bed and immediately stub your toe on a wooden stool. You hold in the curse, because the church sees all, and if it doesn't, your neighbour probably does. If you're expected at Mass. Not in a come-if-you-feel-like-it kind of way, but in a get-up-and-go or risk eternal damnation and local gossip sort of way. Everyone must attend. Attendance isn't optional. It's salvation, and also your legal obligation, depending on where and when you are in the Middle Ages. Yes, missing church can result in a fine or a very pointed conversation with the parish priest involving sin, shame, and a lot of Latin. You throw on your cleanest dirty tunic, tie your belt and wipe your face with a damp cloth. You skip breakfast, not out of piety, but because the bread has mould you don't trust today. You trudge toward the church with a small crowd of equally sleepy, equally itchy villagers. You glance around and realize everyone has the same idea. Try to look holier than your sins suggest. The church is the biggest building in the village. Stone walls, stained glass windows, if you're lucky, and a steeple that seems to stab the sky. You step inside and are hit with cold air, candle smoke, and the faint scent of incense mixed with unwashed bodies. You find a place to stand. There are no pews for you. Those are for the rich. You shuffle into the back, next to a child picking their nose and a woman whispering a prayer under her breath. The service begins in Latin. You understand maybe 5 words, most of them repeated endlessly. Dominus, Sanctus, Peccatum. You nod along, pretending you're deeply moved, but mostly you're wondering whether anyone would notice if you sat down for just a moment. The priest drones on. His voice bounces off the stone walls, and your knees begin to ache. You shift your weight. Someone clears their throat behind you. You try not to sneeze, cough, or yawn. Each is interpreted as something between disrespect and mild demonic possession. And then it's time for confession. That's when things get really real. You kneel before the priest and try to remember all the sins you were supposed to keep track of. Sloth, gluttony, a few unkind thoughts about your neighbour's turnip harvest. You mumble something about envy. He sighs deeply. You're assigned prayers as penance, and now you have spiritual homework. Back outside, the church bells ring again, and the villagers scatter like pigeons. But even though Mass is over, the church's grip is not. It follows you everywhere. It decides what you eat. No meat on Fridays. It controls the calendar. Saints' feast days, holy days, fasting seasons. It defines morality, marriage, inheritance, and property rights. Your crops are even blessed, or cursed, depending on which saint's relic is paraded through town, and how pious your beau was. You hear rumours that someone 2 villages over was excommunicated for stealing a candlestick. Not only is he banned from church, but no one will trade with him, talk to him, or help him. Excommunication in the Middle Ages is social death. Literal, sometimes. You shudder. And the church isn't all quiet sermons and gentle hymns. There are inquisitions, public penance, witch trials. Accusations can come out of nowhere. That herbal remedy you took for your cough, some say it's magic. The woman who gave it to you, a wise woman, or maybe a witch, depending on who's asking. You start to feel itchy again, but this time with anxiety. Historians still argue how oppressive or benevolent the medieval church truly was, whether it kept order or simply exerted fear. But from where you're standing, with sore knees and a growing list of confessions, it feels a bit like both. You pass the parish priest on your way home. He's well fed, wearing robes that don't itch, and talking about the price of fish with the reeve. His house is one of the few with a chimney that doesn't leak. You're not bitter, just observant. Later, you hear the church bell again, this time for a funeral. A man died of fever, and the burial must happen quickly. You follow the small procession to the graveyard beside the church, where plots are reused when space runs out. The priest says words. The earth swallows another villager. The grave marker is a simple wooden cross. You're told the man had no sins worth remembering. You hope someone says the same about you one day. Or at least pretends to. Quirky fact: some churches kept bones relics of saints locked in glass cases or buried under the altar. People believed touching them could heal diseases or grant blessings. Others wore tiny splinters of holy wood around their necks. You wonder how many pieces of the true cross could really exist. You stop wondering. The answer is a suspiciously large number. That night, you kneel by your straw bed and say your prayers. Not because you feel particularly devout, but because fear is a surprisingly effective motivator. You whisper names of saints you barely remember, cross yourself, and climb into the blankets. Outside, the bells toll again. Compline, the night prayer. You close your eyes, listening. You think about heaven, about hell, about whether tomorrow's pottage will be hot. Then you yawn, roll over, and let the dark wrap around you like a woolen shroud. Just try not to dream of Latin chanting. Morning sneaks in like a thief grey, damp, and a little bit rude. Your eyes open slowly, protesting against consciousness. You're still sore, still itchy, and the wool blanket clinging to your shoulder smells more than a little like wet dog. But today, there's a ripple of excitement in the air. It's feast day. You think, finally, a break. And you're right. Sort of. Feast days are the medieval equivalent of national holidays, sanctioned by the church, marked by mass, and often followed by celebration. But that word, celebration, is generous. Don't expect cake and candles, expect noise, smells, and the ever-present threat of food poisoning. You crawl out of bed and pull on your one slightly less damp tunic. Someone has already lit the fire, and the pot smells slightly more edible than usual. You're handed a bowl of pottage, again, but with a bonus, an actual chunk of meat floating in it. Tiny, mysterious, and suspiciously chewy. You don't ask what kind. You eat around it, savouring the novelty. After Mass, longer than usual, with extra Latin and slightly more incense, the village begins to shift into celebration mode. Tables are dragged out, barrels of ale appear, someone strings up tattered banners made from old cloth. A man starts tuning a lute, which sounds like a cat being politely strangled. It's happening. The feast is beginning. You glance at the food table and try not to get your hopes up. There are pies. Meat, mostly. But meat in the Middle Ages is a game of risk. The smell is strong, the crust's uneven, and at least one of them is bubbling slightly. You take a slice. It's greasy, oddly sweet, and definitely over-salted. You chew carefully, praying there's no bone shard or pigeon beak. Then there's ale. More ale than usual. It flows freely, and you realise quickly that feast day also means drunk by noon. Children sip from mugs. Old women are already swaying. The local reeve has taken to singing a love song about a goose. No one stops him. There's dancing, clumsy, joyful, foot-stomping madness. A circle forms, hands are grabbed, and you're dragged into it before you can object. You hop awkwardly, trying not to step on someone's barefoot toes. The music speeds up. The laughter gets louder. Someone falls and is promptly stepped over. You're sweating, dizzy, and vaguely terrified, but also oddly smiling. And then you hear the retching. Someone near the ale barrels has overestimated their tolerance. They're leaning against a fence post, saying a prayer and losing their lunch at the same time. Not far away, a child eats half a pie, runs in a circle, and does the same. You sidestep the puddles. Feast day is a glorious, chaotic thing. It's messy, loud, and somehow always a little sticky. People shout, flirt, argue. One man claims he saw a ghost near the churchyard last night. Another insists the goose pie is enchanted. Someone starts juggling, and then immediately drops everything. A pig runs loose. No one stops it. You learn that food here is often sweetened with dried fruit, not sugar. Sugar's far too rare and expensive. So that meat pie, it's got raisins and dates. And are those prunes? Possibly. You chew suspiciously and choose to believe it's tradition, not punishment. There's a mystery pudding, thick and greyish, served with enthusiasm and no explanation. You take a bite. It tastes like cinnamon and something uncomfortably gamey. You nod politely and pretend to enjoy it. The cook is watching. A minstrel arrives, wearing a hat so large it blocks your view of the beer barrel. He starts playing a loud nasal instrument and shouting rhymes about saints, animals, and one extremely rude miller. People laugh, some boo. He bows dramatically and demands a coin. You give him half of one and he curses you gently in rhyme. You feel honoured. Historians still argue whether these feast days were truly joyful for peasants, or just more exhausting work in disguise, because someone had to cook, clean, serve, and scrape the mystery pudding off the dirt. And if you were low in the hierarchy, that someone was probably you. You're handed a roasted root vegetable on a stick. It's scorched on one side and raw on the other. You eat it anyway. Then come the games. Tug of war with frayed rope, sack races, a wrestling match between two men who clearly didn't plan to lose. You stand back nursing your mug of ale and hoping not to be volunteered. Too late. Someone grabs your arm, and suddenly you're in a contest to see who can balance a pail of water on their head while dancing. You last 8 seconds. Evening falls. The fire pit roars. A pig is being turned on a spit, but judging by the smell, it's more for show than consumption. People are singing now, loud, off-key, and with all the enthusiasm of folks who haven't had a holiday in 3 months. Someone nearby is playing a flute, badly. You don't even know if it's a real song. You sway along anyway. And then, the drama. A scuffle breaks out. 2 men arguing over a misinterpreted comment about someone's sister or someone's sheep. Possibly both. A few shouts, a punch, and then the reeve steps in and thwacks them both with a stick. Apologies are mumbled. Ale is poured. It's all forgotten within minutes. Later, you stumble toward the communal fire. A bard is telling a tale. Something about dragons, saints, and a fish that predicted the weather. No one questions it. You curl up near the warmth, your belly full, your head spinning, and your ears ringing. You made it through your first feast day. You're sticky, your tunic smells like onions, and there's something unidentifiable on your sleeve. But for a few hours, life wasn't all rules, rot, and rashes. As the fire dies down and the stars appear above, you lie back on the grass and let out a long, slow sigh. The flute squeaks one last note. Someone nearby hiccups and whispers a prayer. A dog curls up next to you, uninvited, but warm. And just before sleep takes you, you hear a soft, triumphant belch from the pig juggler. Medieval joy, in its truest form. The morning after feast day feels like the medieval version of a hangover, minus any aspirin, sunglasses, or iced coffee. You wake on the dirt floor of your home, head pounding, mouth dry, stomach confused. Your tunic's on sideways, your shoes are missing, and there's a smear of something on your cheek that smells faintly of goose fat. You'd investigate, but honestly, you don't have the strength. Your bones ache, your muscles whimper, and your eyes beg for more darkness. But the day doesn't care. The sun's already up, the rooster's late again, and someone outside is yelling about a runaway goat. Welcome back to reality. You crawl to your feet, your body stiff from sleeping on bundled rags. Everyone in the house is waking slowly. Someone groans. Someone else mumbles a prayer. Your little brother is curled up under the table, cuddling a turnip like it owes him something. But even if you're tired, the work doesn't pause, and neither does sleep itself, because sleep here is complicated. In the modern world, sleep means comfort pillows, silence, maybe white noise or calming rain sounds. Here, none of that, not even close. Let's start with your bed. It's not a bed. It's a sack of straw on the floor, shared with your siblings and probably a few insects who pay no rent. The straw is pokey, flattened from years of bodies, and smells like sweat, soot, and feet. You try to rearrange it, but the moment you lie down, One straw pokes directly into your spine like it's mad at you. Blankets? Maybe a scratchy wool one if you're lucky. More likely, you huddle under your tunic or someone else's cloak, trying not to steal too much warmth. The house is one room, and everyone shares the same air, which smells like old onions, wood smoke, and dreams that died last winter. The nights are loud. There's no insulation, no soundproofing, just thin wooden walls and thatched roofing. You hear everything. Wind hissing through gaps in the wall, dogs barking, chickens clucking in their sleep, someone 2 houses over arguing about cheese, and worst of all, the symphony of human bodies, snoring, coughing, muttering, and rats. Yes, rats. You hear them skitter across the floor, occasionally racing over someone's foot. You once saw one drag a piece of bread off the table while you stared, too tired to care. You named him Gerald. He doesn't pay rent either. You try to sleep, but the cold creeps in, gnawing at your toes. You shift closer to your sister. She elbows you. You elbow her back. The straw crunches. Someone farts. You all pretend it didn't happen. Historians believe that medieval people often slept in 2 shifts, first sleep and second sleep, with a few hours of wakefulness in between. Some people prayed during that time. Others gossiped. Or, well, tried to make more babies. You just lie there, wishing you could sleep for 8 uninterrupted hours like the rich folks in fairy tales. You drift off during first sleep and dream about warm bread. Then you're awake again. It's still dark, your back hurts, and someone has stolen half the blanket. Second sleep begins when you finally manage to stop shivering, only to be woken by a rooster with a vendetta. And remember, privacy? Not a thing. Everyone sleeps in the same space. If someone snores, you deal with it. If someone talks in their sleep about St. Bridget and suspicious pies, you just nod and hope it's not prophetic. If someone gets sick in the night, it's your job to help, or at least clean up afterward. Occasionally, your family might host a traveller. That means you're bumped off the straw pile and onto the floor itself. You sleep, curled in a ball, using your arm as a pillow and a sack of onions as a footrest. Quirky tidbit: in some regions, beds were built into walls. Bedspots beds, to preserve heat. Sounds cosy, but they were often cramped, unventilated, and dark enough to feel like you were napping inside a coffin. You're not sure which is worse, rat-filled straw or coffin bed. You make a mental note to avoid both. You also learn that being indoors doesn't always mean safety. Fleas and lice thrive in the warm, close quarters of medieval homes. Everyone's itching, and if you're not, you will be. You once saw your neighbour's kid pull a flea off his leg and flick it into the fire like it was a game. You gave him a nod of respect. Pillows? Don't even think about it. You ball up a tunic or use a block of wood. Neck pain is eternal. You wake each morning with a crick so sharp you wonder if your spine is trying to escape. And even if by some miracle you fall into deep sleep, the morning doesn't wait. There are cows to milk, fires to stoke, dough to knead. You wake groggy, grumpy, and slightly crusty. You rinse your face with cold water that stings like betrayal, and blink at the world, unsure if you actually slept or just passed out with style. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants were chronically sleep-deprived or simply used to their grim reality. Maybe both. All you know is that your eyes burn, your back aches, and you'd trade your soul for a real mattress and blackout curtains. But sleep isn't the goal here. Survival is. Sleep is just something that happens between chores, illness, and church bells. You yawn, scratch your scalp and step outside into another cold, damp morning. Your breath clouds the air. Your tunic sticks to your body in all the wrong places. Gerald the rat darts past your foot with half an onion. And you think, not for the first time, I miss pillows. It's mid-morning, and after yet another spectacularly unsatisfying meal of cold barley mush and a slice of bread that may or may not be older than you, you're given a special task. Accompany your neighbour to the village green. There's entertainment, she says with a sparkle in her eye that makes you suspicious. The last time someone promised entertainment, You ended up watching 3 grown men argue over turnip weights for 2 hours. Still, you follow her, mostly because you've already mucked the animal pens this week, and you're hoping for a break. What you find is, well, technically, yes, it's entertainment, but joyful, comforting, relaxing? Not exactly. The first thing you see is a crowd forming around a wooden stage hastily nailed together from old planks and optimism. A jester is there, if you can call him that. He wears a crooked hat with 2 floppy horns, his tunic is patched in 5 different places, and he's juggling 3 turnips with the speed and grace of a sleepy goose. He tells a joke about a monk, a barrel of ale, and a chicken. You don't laugh, but the guy next to you snorts beer through his nose, so you force a polite chuckle. The jester dances, trips, then burps. This, apparently, brings the house down. Jesters aren't clowns in the modern sense. They're closer to satirists, sometimes allowed to poke fun at lords and priests, but only just enough. One wrong joke and they could be retired, via stocks or worse. You watch this one carefully. He's got good instincts. Knows just how far to push it without getting himself kicked. Then the mystery play begins. You're herded toward a makeshift set where robed villagers act out religious stories. Today's episode, The Last Judgment. Again, it starts with a demon dragging a shrieking man into a fake pit. There's fire, torchlight, brimstone, burning herbs, and a long monologue in rhymed couplets about eternal damnation. Children watch, wide-eyed. One of them cries, no one comforts him. This is the point, after all. Fear keeps people obedient. You try to enjoy it, but the mud is thick underfoot, and the wind keeps blowing smoke in your eyes. The devil actor is really leaning into it, leaping about with a pitchfork and shrieking in falsetto. Honestly, he might be the best part of the show. Still, after the 3rd scene, featuring sobbing sinners and smug angels, your brain starts drifting. You notice the guy next to you picking his teeth with a chicken bone. A dog walks across the stage mid-performance and is greeted by applause. The audience is losing focus. So is the cast. Then someone starts shouting from the other side of the green. Bear baiting is about to begin. You hesitate. You've heard about this. You're not excited. A large bear is chained to a post, and dogs are released to attack it. The bear roars, swipes, and fights. People cheer. Children laugh. You stand frozen, stomach turning. This is considered sport, amusement, a way to pass time and prove bravery. The dogs yelp. The bear bleeds. You wonder what's wrong with everyone. You wonder what's wrong with you for watching. You turn away, and that's when you hear the flute. A man in garish clothes is setting up near the edge of the green with a strange box and a tiny dancing goat. The goat hops in a circle. The crowd trickles over. The man sings songs that sound like nursery rhymes run through a fever dream. You catch one lyric about a woman marrying a scarecrow and wonder if you're hallucinating. Quirky tidbit, travelling performers often included musicians, animal acts, puppets, and bizarre wonders like 2-headed pigs or mermaids made from fish and papier-mâché. Today's offering, a chicken that allegedly speaks Latin. You wait. It clucks. The owner swears it said Ave Maria. You remain unconvinced. You try to walk away, but someone grabs your arm and points excitedly to a puppet show. It's crude, loud, and strangely violent. One puppet repeatedly hits another with a wooden spoon while yelling something about taxes. The crowd roars. You smile nervously. Historians still argue whether these forms of medieval entertainment were truly joyful or simply distracting. You're starting to suspect the latter, because underneath the laughter, there's tension, hunger, restlessness, a need to forget, even for just a few hours, that life is hard, short, and usually damp. The final act of the day is a troupe of acrobats. They tumble, twist, and leap, mostly successfully. One misses a landing and lands in the mud. Applause. He bows, grinning through a mouthful of straw. Then someone starts playing a hurdy-gurdy, an instrument that sounds like a violin having a panic attack, and dancing begins. You get dragged in, You trip. You recover. Someone steps on your foot. It's fine. This is fine. The music speeds up. People spin. A woman falls over laughing. A man tries to juggle apples and drops them all. The sun is setting. The air smells like spiced cider and roasted meat. Mostly illusions, but they're good ones. You sit down, finally, on a stump at the edge of the green, watching fireflies blink in the dusk. A dog licks your hand. A kid offers you half a boiled onion as a treat. You accept. Today was chaotic, confusing, oddly human, not relaxing, not really. But maybe that's the point. Entertainment here isn't escape, it's survival. A way to laugh in the face of filth, pain, and a future that rarely promises more than another muddy tomorrow. As you rise and trudge home in the dark, the jester waves at you. He waves back. He winks, then burps again. And you think, yeah, that tracks. You wake to the sound of shouting. Not the usual morning kind where someone's cow has broken into the barley field, or a goat's climbed onto someone's roof. This is different. Sharper. Urgent. You sit up, rub your eyes, and peek outside. There was a commotion in the square. People gathered, arms waving, the village reeve pacing, red in the face. And at the centre of it all, a man, tied to a post, mud splattered and shaking. You learn quickly. He's been accused of stealing a loaf of bread. Not much else is known. Maybe he was hungry. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he's entirely innocent. Doesn't matter. He's on trial now. Village style. Justice in the Middle Ages is less about evidence and more about spectacle. You trudge over with the others, still groggy, and find a spot near the back. The reeve stands beside the accused and starts listing the charges. Theft. Disrespect. Possibly heresy. It's a lot, considering the man looks like he's barely eaten in a week. The village has no real courtroom. The court is wherever everyone can fit. And the judge? Sometimes the lord, sometimes the reeve, sometimes a jury of angry neighbours. Today it's the reeve and the priest standing grimly shoulder to shoulder, holding a worn copy of the law book and a very large stick. The evidence is thin. Someone saw him near the bakery. A half loaf was found behind his cottage. His hands smell like flour. That's it. That's the case. Then come the suggestions for punishment. A fine? He can't pay. Stocks? Common choice. Someone shouts, "Dunk him in the pond." Someone else yells, "Trial by water." A murmur ripples through the crowd. Trial by water. Of course. You've heard of it, seen it once. It's not pretty. The accused is dragged toward the pond. His hands are tied. The logic goes like this. If he floats, he's guilty, because water rejects the sinful. If he sinks, he's innocent, but possibly dead. You blink slowly. This is justice? They tie a rope around his waist, generous really, and push him into the water. He flails, floats. The crowd gasps. "Witchcraft!" someone yells. He floats. He's yanked out, sputtering and coughing. Guilty. You watch, jaw clenched, as he's thrown into the stocks. Wooden beams clamp around his wrists and neck. Children throw rotten vegetables. A man spits. The baker, curiously absent from the scene, is later seen enjoying a full loaf behind his stool. You glance around and realize everyone accepts this. It's just the way things are. Right and wrong are a blend of rumor, superstition, and who your friends are. Your stomach twists. Historians still argue whether medieval justice was primarily a form of social control or sincere moral enforcement. Right now, it feels like both and neither. You've also heard of other trials. Trial by fire. Carry a red-hot iron bar a certain distance. If your wounds heal cleanly within 3 days, you're innocent. Trial by combat. Fight your accuser to the death. God will give victory to the righteous. Trial by oath. Swear you didn't do it, and get 12 neighbours to swear they believe you. You try to imagine 12 people in this village vouching for you. You try not to cry. Quirky fact. In some regions, animals could be put on trial. Pigs, goats, even roosters. There are records of pigs being executed for murder. You look at the village pig and give it a knowing nod. Watch your back, you whisper. Back in the square, the man in the stocks is shivering. The sun's out, but there's no warmth. People move on quickly. There's grain to mill, roofs to patch, fires to tend. Justice has been served. Or at least performed. But the unease lingers. You wander toward the edge of town and find an old woman boiling herbs. She's a healer. Maybe a witch. Depends on the day. Today, she's ignored. Last year, someone accused her of cursing a cow. Nothing came of it. But everyone's watching now, waiting for her to slip. Justice is fickle. It doesn't just punish action. It punishes suspicion. A strange dream. A black cat. A birthmark. Wrong look, wrong word, wrong timing. Later you return to the square. The stocks are empty now. The man's gone. No one says where. You assume he was let go. Or maybe not. You hope he gets out of this village. You hope you do too. That night, you lie awake thinking about truth, about law, about how quickly the crowd turns cruel when given something to jeer at. And about that time you took an extra onion from the communal basket. You wrap your blanket tighter, trying to block out the chill creeping in from the cracks in the wall, and the memory of the priest's smile as he watched the man gasp in the pond. Somewhere nearby the church bell tolls, a reminder that all is seen, all is judged. You close your eyes and whisper a prayer to Saint Cuthbert, or maybe Saint Avoidin. Notice, either one will do. You're woken by a knock at the door, not the gentle kind, the kind that means trouble. You sit up fast, heart pounding, unsure if you're being summoned, accused, or simply volunteered for something terrible. It's a messenger from the manor. The Lord's men are calling up the able. Able to what? Breathe? Regret? Doesn't matter. You're going to learn that when it comes to war in the Middle Ages, you don't have to be trained or willing, just alive. The door shuts behind you, and your family watches in silence. No hugs, no goodbyes. Just the understanding that once you're on the Lord's list, you go. You and a handful of other peasants trudge to the manor, where a bored-looking man with a very shiny helmet is yelling at everyone. You're told to line up. You do. He starts handing out weapons. Except weapons is generous. Some get spears, others get sharpened sticks. You get a rusted scythe and a thick quilt to use as armor. Welcome to conscription. You're not a knight. You're not a squire. You're not even a proper soldier. You're levy, part of the civilian group pressed into service when the Lord needs bodies to defend his land or bolster a noble's campaign. You're a meat shield, with shoes. The knight explains the plan, though most of it's drowned out by the sound of someone vomiting behind you. You catch words like march, enemy, and glory. No one claps. You're handed a leather strap with a crude badge. That makes it official. You're now part of the military. Sort of. You march. Not far, just to the village green. You're trained briefly. A man yells, "Stabe," while you jab at a hay bale. You're told not to swing wildly. Then you're told to swing wildly. You're corrected constantly by people who've clearly never touched a weapon that wasn't also a farming tool. Your armour, if you have any, consists of layers. Tunic, gambeson, padded coat, maybe a metal pot on your head if they're feeling generous. The knight rides past. Historians still argue how often peasants actually fought in battles versus just building siege works or hauling supplies. But from the weight of the scythe in your hands and the blisters forming already, you're not just here to spectate. Soon the word comes. There's movement near the border. Another lord, another claim, another war. You're told to walk. So you do. Marching is not the glorious stuff of epics. It's painful, slow, and blister-inducing. Your shoes, already miserable, are now soaked. You sleep outside, under carts or trees, wrapped in your quilt of questionable protection. You eat salted meat and hard bread. You drink water from streams. Sometimes it's fine. Sometimes it tries to kill you. And then, one morning, after a long night of rain, you're told to form up. It's happening. You stand in a field with mist still clinging to the grass. The other side is forming too. Banners flutter, horses snort, and everyone is pretending they're not terrified. Your group is shoved into the front, because that's where the expendables go. The horns blow, people scream, everything becomes noise and chaos. You swing your scythe, you miss. Someone hits you in the arm, you scream, you hit back, you fall, you get up. You don't remember much, just mud, blood, and the unmistakable smell of fear. You see a man impaled, another runs, a third stands frozen until an arrow drops him like a sack of grain. Eventually the horn blows again. It's over. Sort of. You're alive, others aren't. You sit down and shake. Your hands won't stop trembling. The knight rides past and congratulates the survivors. You did well, he says. You want to laugh. You return to the village days later. Your quilt is torn. Your scythe is dull. You have bruises in places you didn't know could bruise. There's no parade, no feast, just your chores. Waiting. And that's the reality of war for most medieval folks. Not heroic, not epic, just terrifying. Dirty, confusing. One quirky tale floats around. A peasant who allegedly scared off knights by banging pots and shouting nonsense. He was later celebrated as a strategist. You doubt that happened, but honestly, you'd have tried it. That night, you sit by the fire, feet in a bowl of warm water, and stare into the flames. Your family doesn't ask questions. They just hand you soup. You're grateful. You glance at the scythe leaning against the wall and wonder if it should go back to cutting grain. Then you remember the faces of the men who didn't come back. You eat your soup quietly, chew slowly, and hope no one knocks at the door tomorrow. You wake up with a heavy feeling, not just in your limbs, but in your soul, the kind of tired that goes deeper than muscle. You sit up slowly, feeling every bruise, every scratch, every memory settle back into place like unwanted guests in a too small room. Today is just another day. But something's changed. You've seen too much, felt too much, smelled far, far too much. Your back aches as you pull on your tunic, still itchy, still questionable in cleanliness. The house is quiet except for the low crackle of the hearth. A pot of something vaguely edible simmers. You sniff. Barley. Again. The excitement is gone. There's no feast today, no puppet shows, no jester burping in iambic pentameter. Just mud, smoke, and the looming question, how does anyone do this, day after day? You step outside and glance around. The same goats, the same damp breeze, the same rooster, who has now fully abdicated his alarm duties. He's asleep on a barrel, probably smarter than all of you. You go about your tasks, hauling water, repairing a fence, sweeping straw out of the house only for it to blow right back in. Your hands are automatic. Your mind floats elsewhere. You think about what life used to feel like, when you believed a hard day meant skipped Wi-Fi or a late bus. Now, your biggest luxury is dry feet. You pass the herb woman again, Maud with her apron stained and her hands full of lavender. She hums softly, ignoring the stares. You nod to her. She nods back. A silent agreement. Survival isn't about comfort. It's about stubbornness. You sit by the well, taking a break you probably haven't earned. A child runs by with a wooden wheel and stick. The medieval version of a racing car. He's barefoot, dirty, grinning like he knows a secret. You close your eyes and listen. The wind in the trees. A cartwheel squeaking. The distant clank of blacksmith hammers. the mutter of a prayer from a passing monk. Life, grinding forward, one uneven step at a time. Historians still debate whether medieval peasants lived in constant suffering, or whether they found joy in the small things. Music, stories, firelight, familiar faces. You want to believe in the small joys, but you also know that joy here is earned like everything else, slowly, painfully, and only if you're lucky. You see a man leading a donkey piled high with sacks. He looks exhausted, but when his daughter runs out to greet him, he smiles. Just for a second. That's it. That's the joy. You hold on to it. Later, a travelling friar tells a tale in the square. Something about a saint defeating a dragon with nothing but a prayer and a stick. You don't believe it, but the cadence is soothing. You close your eyes and let the story wrap around you like a blanket that doesn't smell like wet wool for once. You look around and notice something else. Everyone's tired. Everyone's hurting. But everyone's here. They show up. They work. They scrape laughter from the bottom of the barrel. They survive. You're not sure you could do it much longer. Honestly, you probably wouldn't last a week more. Your joints already feel older than they should. You dream of hot water, soft pillows, silence that isn't full of sniffles and rat feet. But you've also learned something. You're tougher than you thought. Dirtier, sure. Hungrier, itchier, but tougher. You trudge home, sore feet dragging through the same old mud. A dog barks at a goose. A boy falls into a barrel and emerges grinning. Someone's cooking turnips again. You step into your house, sit by the fire and eat. Slowly, quietly, your fingers wrapped around a wooden spoon, your mind strangely calm. This place has worn you down, yes, but it's also shown you something real. How thin the line is between endurance and collapse, and how people, somehow, stay on the right side of it. You lie down on your straw mattress. The stars peek through the holes in the roof. The wind whistles its usual lullaby. Your blanket smells like cabbage. You exhale, long and slow. You wouldn't survive this world. Not really. But now you understand the ones who did. The fire burns low. The laughter has faded. The air is still. You lie there on your scratchy straw bed, eyes half closed, the sounds of the village growing fainter with each breath. No more turnip pies. No more wandering pigs. No more jester songs echoing across the green. Just the soft shuffle of wind against the wooden walls and the familiar creak of beams settling overhead. Your limbs are heavy. Your eyelids sink like stones into deep water. Every ache, every blister, every strange moment of today softens, floats away, like mist lifting from the fields at sunrise. You're not carrying a bucket. You're not marching toward battle. You're not chewing barley that tastes like sadness. You're safe now. You're warm. You're here. Let the images fade, the smoke, the mud, the toothaches, the lice. Let them all slip away, gently, one by one. There's no one calling your name, no reeve shouting orders, no church bell dragging you out of rest. Only the hush of night and stillness. Let your breath slow. Let your muscles soften. Let your thoughts blur like ink in rain. It's over. You've walked the roads of a world long gone. You've seen its pain, its rituals, its odd little joys. But now it's time to leave it behind. There's nothing more to prove. You made it further than anyone expected. So close your eyes, sink into the quiet, and drift deep. Greater than, the story ends here. Close your eyes, drift deep. Sweet dreams.